All right. Anybody else?
Yeah,
I found it
I
pretty
appreciate
straightforward.
that.
Uh-huh.
I found it pretty straightforward. It was pretty cool, pretty fun
Okay,
to mess around with the image.
good. Anybody have any problems? Everybody was able to do it, right?
I was able to do it, but it took me a long time to figure it out. But I'm a little worried that because that first project took a while, that the other ones, if I don't know what I'm doing with the first one, how am I gonna do well with the upcoming ones?
I think you'll be fine. The whole point is we're going to go pretty slow. And it will take time. Honestly, I mean, I do it quickly because I've been doing this for 20 years now. So, but it should take some time to kind of go through that process, and we're going to keep going through it. I'm going to review that stuff a little bit today. We'll do a few new things, but it really, I don't think I would worry about that yet. And then when we do get to quote projects that are going to be graded, you will have ample time to do that and time to go over it with me if needed and all that. So I wouldn't worry about any of that at this point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Everybody else okay? All right, so let me get my share going. Share. Shall we? All right, and get set up here. Again, as we're working, if I move too fast or something is like, what was that? Just, let me know. Shout it out. I'm going to get the chat opened up here also. But, feel free to stop as we're going. Yeah, someone quote. If you guys miss something, again, we'll be putting the videos up online. And if you have to step away or you have to leave early, whatever, that's why the videos are there. It's actually kind of an advantage of having the videos over being in class. If we were in class, obviously we wouldn't have any videos, but because we are here, we get the advantage of a video. I keep threatening to make my daughter watch my videos. She laughs at me. She's like, "How many followers you got? You only have like 6." She watches their videos and they've got millions of followers. It's coming. It's coming. You guys are going to spread the word. I'm going to have millions of followers soon watching my boring videos on how to use Photoshop.
Of course, you could always offer her a monetary bribe.
Oh no, she's already had those before. So, all right. So this was kind of basically the homework, working with her, and we took off some blemishes, hopefully. And again, the point is just kind of getting used to working with these tools, working with layers, working in a non-destructive fashion. And that's kind of crucial with Photoshop is starting to understand how to work in a way that one preserves your original, okay, the original picture, but also allows you to make quick changes down the line. Because as you start to work, you're going to want to make changes, whether it's you, your client, your boss, supervisor, whomever it is, changes will want to be. And if we didn't do it in this kind of fashion, 2 days later or 2 weeks later, as we open these files back up, we're not going to be able to make those changes again. So if we did this and like, oh, that's cool, that's perfect, exactly what I wanted, and then they're like 2 weeks later, you know what, can we get rid of the eye? We just think it's too much now. Well, now it's just turn it off and resave. Had we not done that, had we not preserved the original and made copies and then worked on top of this, it'd be much more difficult to do. Or even something like, hey, we love it, but can we make the eye a different color? Well, now we can come in here and we could do an adjustment and change the color of the eye itself. I'm just going to color. So you can, make it blue, whatever. It's not ideal there, but you could do that change. Okay, so working in a non-destructive way allows us to make changes and adjustments down the line and do them relatively quickly, as opposed to having to kind of come back and try to figure out how do I get rid of this eye now that I've drawn it in on the person. Okay, so working non-destructively is going to be pretty darn important as we go. So I'm gonna open up another file. Any questions on the garage tip before we move on? Any questions on that? Everybody was able to
Oh,
kind of do this.
So that colorize that you just did to that third eye,
Uh-huh.
that's was that something that affects the entire layer? So it would change the color of the entire image, pretty much.
No, it's just changed the color of this particular layer. And we're going to actually go through colorizing, doing some of that kind of layer specific or over the entire image today.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, we're going to get into that today a little bit. All right. Other questions on this about the eye or about the blemish? We were using the healing brush, the spot healing brush predominantly, maybe a little bit, and the clone tool to kind of duplicate the eye. But there were other things potentially like the brush or the eraser tool to kind of clear up the edges here around her eye. And then using things like the bracket, left, right bracket to make your brushes bigger or smaller. Okay, so that's something you should probably start to get used to. And again, some of this is going to just come with memory as you start to work it up and start to play. Okay, with that. Whoops, it went away. Okay, so we're going to be playing with those kind of ideas of how to add things in and take things out as we start to work to build up what we want. All right, so questions on that so far? Kind of everybody's good? All right, so I'm going to move onward. I'm opening up the iceberg photo, and I also have this lightning image, and they are on the website. I want to see what pictures they are. 1 second. What's Google celebrating today? Champion Island Games. I don't know what that is. Y'all probably know. I'm not a gamer. All right, so I'm using photo 7 for the lightning that's on here, and no, not her yet. Photo 3 is the iceberg. Okay, so 3 and 7 is what I've used, so you can download those and open those up on your computer. And what I want to do is I'm going to bring in this lightning sky to this iceberg. So my goal is to kind of get rid of this sky and make this the sky here. So first thing I'm gonna do is just copy this entire image and build it into a new layer with the iceberg. So to do that, I'm just gonna do Command A, which is selecting all. And you see, I know I've selected it because I've got the marching ants around it. And then I'm just going to do Command C, which is copy. And then I'm going to come to the icebergs. And I'm going to first duplicate my iceberg so I have a copy that I'm going to work from. And then I'm going to do a Command V, which is paste. And that's bringing in the lightning itself. And it's very big. I can see the file is big. So I'm going to do a Command T, which is transform. And I'm zooming out here. And you can see that that lightning is literally 4 times bigger than the original. So I'm just going to scale it down real quick. So I'm literally just dragging from the corner and dragging it over. And we can see I got that image there. It just makes most of the image show up when I start to get rid of that sky. And I could just hit return, and it just kind of puts it in place. Again, it's not permanent. If I select the move tool, okay, up here, the one with the cross and the arrows, I can still move it around. I can still enlarge it again, it's the Command T. You can just drag it out. So I can still change what's happening with it, but I want to kind of get it sort of in place and kind of where I want it to be. And then I'm going to move that layer below. So when I take out the sky, it will show up below the iceberg itself. Does that make sense? So we're just kind of positioning things the way we want. Things above the top layer will be the iceberg itself and the water. And then the next layer down will be the sky, which has the lightning in it. And then we're placing that here. Okay. So what I want to do is kind of just go through some ways that we can take out the sky for one, and how to do it in a kind of a non-destructive way ultimately. So I'm going to go through some ways that are both destructive, meaning you're destroying the picture, or destroying the image, just stuff on the layer, and how to do it in a non-destructive way ultimately as we start to work here. Okay, so we'll go from the most destructive way kind of things to the least with this. So first we want to select the sky. Well, in Photoshop, there's a couple ways of doing this, and we want to try to experiment and use what's going to work best for us, and also work what's going to work the fastest for us. Well, the Photoshop has gotten pretty darn smart. So I'm going to go to select, and there's an area that says select, and it says sky. Okay, so we're going to let and see with Photoshop, we'll select the sky. Good thinking. We're on that layer. And you'll see we're on the same top layer there now. It did a pretty darn good job of selecting the sky. I'm going to zoom in just so we can see it a little bit closer. And you can see it went along the edge here. It's not perfect. There are some a little bit of it missed a few spots, but overall, for just literally selecting one button, it did a pretty darn good job. Okay, so if I hit delete now, it's going to pull it away, and it's going to give me the lightning. Okay, and it's not bad for a quick little mock-up version. There is some kind of overlapping here that didn't quite work perfectly, but for a 20-second little thing, especially if I want to try it out to say, hey, let's see how well it works. If it works well, and it looks like it's going to be the way I want, I can come back and define it. That wasn't too bad. Okay, so what I did was, again, I selected this sky. I'm going to just stuck it back. I literally selected the layer, and I went to select and sky, and the computer, Photoshop, knows what the sky is here and picks it out. Okay, and it does, again, a pretty fair job with it. Now, I'm just curious. Let me see if it does something else. Give me 1 second. I'm going to copy. I'm going to make it upside down. I just want to see how smart this stuff is getting. So it just like dawned on me, hey, maybe it does this. So I'm on the new layer, upside down, iceberg. I'm going to select sky, and I want to see if it does the sky or if it couldn't find the sky. Wow, that's pretty cool. So it realized that this water was not a sky with their smartness here of the computer or the software, but it didn't recognize the sky when it was upside down. Okay, so now we know. Make sure your sky is right side up. So if you want the sky to be selected and you want your image upside down, flip it first, select it, and then flip it back. All right, so layer selected, select, drop down menu, sky, boom, it does it. Now, if I do subject, it should, in theory, and it did, it picked out the iceberg, okay, because that's the main subject. So again, I think it's worthwhile trying these kind of experiments with the file. Again, complicated pictures that may not know what you're doing, but this is a relatively simple picture that it can kind of work with. And if I want the opposite areas from what it does, I just do inverse. I'm gonna do select the sky. And it got the sky. Now I want the area without the sky. I can go to select and inverse, and that will move the marching ants to the bottom half. Okay, so now it's selecting the iceberg and the water, not the sky itself. Okay, so again, depending on what you're trying to select, it's worth doing. Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, let's say I did get the sky and with the marching ants, but how do you get what if I change my mind? How do I get rid of the marching
ants.
or
You
whatever
can,
you call them?
yeah. So right now we're selecting, we go, no, I don't want that at all. I don't want to select the marching. Just click with the, up here where we have the marquee tool, just click somewhere off of the marching ants. Like I just select here, it deselects them. Okay, there is a deselect, I believe, up here. Let me do that. I'm gonna select it and edit. Let me see, where is it now? Just clear do it. No, that takes it away. I thought there was a deselect button. What I do is I just literally take the marquee tool and select anywhere, and it takes it away. So that's how I do it. Again, there probably is another way. Again, with Photoshop, there's 20 ways of doing it.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
You're moving kind of fast, but
That's okay.
how did you add the layer of the lightning again?
Yeah, I went and opened that file. I selected it off. So again, I could use the marquee tool and just drag it over the entire area. And you can see I got now the marching ants going all the way around. And I could just kind of, at that point, I can copy it. So I can go to edit, copy, Command C. And then I come back to my file with the iceberg. And then I just do Command D or paste.
Oh, okay.
And it puts it in. Okay.
Thank
And
you.
then I resized it because I know it's big. A Command T, a transform, and I scaled it down. Okay, so I can scale it to whatever size I want it to be. Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Any other questions as we go?
This might be like a more advanced question, but
Yeah, that's great.
if you were to like professionally, Photoshop a different sky into that image, would there be any way to create the reflection in the water?
Oh yeah, totally. And that's really what that is the purpose of Photoshop, that we could do that, so we can get that. So once we get this out, I'll try to do a reflection real quick for you, since you asked. I'll just kind of go through and we'll play with it and see what we can do.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. So again, that would be a destructive way of selecting the sky and deleting. Okay, so we did select sky, and then we hit delete, which is taking it out. Now we know the edge is not perfect here, so we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to fix that. But that is a way of doing it. And again, it's taking it away permanently. Okay, so it is gone. And once we move on or we open this file back up in 2 days, that sky is still going to be gone. I can't add it back in. So in theory, we want to work in kind of a non-destructive way, meaning if we change our minds or something happens, we can work it back in. So one way to do that is what we call masking. Okay, so I'm going to do what's called, so it's not masking that we're going to wear because of the virus. It's masking in Photoshop, which has been around much longer than anybody here has been wearing a mask. Okay, so masking in Photoshop is a good thing. Okay, it's a good thing that we can do that. And it goes back to some of the older days in photos before Photoshop digitally, we would cover over things to hide. So that's the masking kind of idea. So I want to what we call mask out the sky and leave the iceberg. So I'm gonna go through some ways of doing that. And some of it is actually using the tools we just did, which is selecting the sky. Okay, so that's one way that we can help, and we can use a mask. So I selected the layer that I want to work with, which is the background layer. And I'm going to come down to the bottom here, back to the bottom where we had the trash can and our duplicate file, or duplicate layer file. If I go over, going to be three more over, I get this white square with a black circle in it. And if you roll over it, it may pop up and say mask. I don't know why mine's not, but it's a masking tool. So you may get a little shortcut pop up. I don't know why mine's not. It was the other day. I'm going to click on it. And when I click, it made a little white box, in this case, next to the image or the iceberg icon here, the layer. And what we're doing is we're going to be able to work a mask and cover up parts of the thing. So when you're working with a mask, it deals with two colors, literally black and white. It will do gray, which gives you kind of a opacity part, but I'm going to start with black and white. Black will hide and white will reveal. So with that done, you'll notice that your paint colors over here on the left turn to black and white when I'm on the mask. And I'm on the mask because I get these little white handles around it. If I'm on the photo itself, I get the white handles around the preview or the icon for the layer. And you also will notice that your paint colors, foreground colors, background colors switch back to whatever you had previously. So in this case, it's blue and red. So when I click on the mask over here, it goes to black and white. And then what I'm going to do is pick a paintbrush. And I've got a pretty large brush here. I'm going to just make it big for a really quick demo. And I'm going to paint. Okay, and again, I can adjust my paintbrush by hardness and size up here. And the flow, I'm going to actually make the flow 100%. So it just kind of puts it right out and I paint it. So now you're going to go, well, that was a mistake. You just kind of painted over the iceberg and left a little bit of the sky. Well, it is a mistake. So how do I fix that? Because it looks like I erased the iceberg, but I really didn't. What I did was I made a mask, which is covering up part of that layer and revealing, in this case, what's below. So to correct my mistake, I'm going to make my paintbrush white. Okay, just switching colors. And then I'm going to paint again. And this time I'm painting in the iceberg. Okay, so I can use my mask to hide or reveal different things as I'm working. So black will hide and white will reveal. Okay, so doing this is going to reveal, but oops, I didn't want that. I want to show it or hide that. I can come back with the black brush and paint. And again, I'm just working really quick, but we're going to be able to paint in and get directly up into the iceberg itself with a small brush. Get a smaller brush going here. And I can literally kind of come along and paint to be perfect. Okay. So I could paint. That's one way of working with a mask, is to literally come through and paint. And I'm making the selections. I'm deciding where the edges are, not the computer. Okay. Because the computer sometimes will get confused. But other times you want to definitely use your computer. So by doing this, I'm not changing anything with the background sky here of the lightning. I'm just simply painting out, it's kind of a good way of thinking about it, painting out the sky from the iceberg. Okay, so I'm going through, and things you want to be careful of and watch is oftentimes when we do this, we get kind of a glow or white edge. And see, that's kind of the white edge here. I didn't get in close enough, so there's kind of a couple little fragment pixels, and it will start to show as kind of like a white halo around objects. So that's kind of a sign that you didn't do a good job of masking out or clipping out what you're doing. Okay, and I'll show you clipping also with this. But I'm basically just kind of painting out the background, and I can go through this all the way around the whole iceberg itself. And when I'm all said and done, the iceberg is still there. And now we have the background of the lightning. And again, this is movable, right? This is not fixed in place. It's a separate layer, so I can move that around and make adjustments to what it was. And likewise, I might even want to, depending on the sky, if I had a sky with a picture of the sky, another picture of the sky, I could move that around. Okay, and again, this is completely adjustable and maneuverable. So this is here, and let's say, you know what, I want the clouds over here on this side, not on this side. I can literally flip it. All right, so I can go to edit, transform, and down here is a flip horizontal. And now the lightning's coming from the other side. Yeah, someone had a question? So I thought it was, someone put a hand up? No? Okay, I thought I heard it, sorry. Then, so again, I can just come through and literally paint out the existing sky. Whoops, I'm not on the layer. Mask, I'm on the layer. I'm just quickly painting it out. I know I'm doing a bad job. But the cool thing is, if I messed up, or you're just working quick and you're like, okay, it's pretty cool, let me come back in and work it up, because it's a mask, it did really no damage to the picture itself. So when I zoom back in over here, I know I did a pretty sloppy job. I can come back with a white brush and I can kind of paint it back in. So I can see where I did paint it in. And I can see, oops, I went too far. So then I can just come back later. I'm going to flip it to a black brush and just come back in and paint out the sky that I want to get rid of. Okay. And again, you can make your brushes bigger or smaller, bracket left or bracket right to pull that up. And again, you can make it harder or softer, whatever you want. If I go with a soft brush, the hardness of soft, okay, it's going to give me more of a fuzzy edge. Okay, you see that fuzz come in. And many times that fuzz works well to hide and allows you to not get that crisp edge. Sometimes you don't want the crispness. The crisp edge turns out to be too much. So it's really just kind of a matter of choice or preference as you're starting to work with that. Okay, so don't be afraid to come back through, and if you want it hard, you can come back through and come back with a hard brush. Okay, or flipped it back to white and reveal some of that hardness. So it's kind of a give and take, and you could, be here literally all day working with this edge and trying to get it perfect. And you would, okay, if this was a job where I'm trying to really get that sky to look right, I would do some adjustments there with that. Now, it works pretty well, but there are some color problems. And again, I'm talking through things just so you guys will start to look at them and analyze as designers, as photographers, as creative people, to know that the sky is really warm. Okay, it's on the cool side because it's kind of a purple tint there, but it's pretty warm compared to the iceberg. Even though there is some purple tint going on in the iceberg in here, there's some of that mauve color. We got to do some kind of adjustments to that. So we can either color adjust the sky, or we can color adjust the iceberg itself. So really, it's just a matter of picking which one you're going to work with to make that adjustment. So we're going to go through that now. So let me just do a color adjustment on this. So let me work with the iceberg because that's in the foreground and we can see that the easiest. And I want to make the iceberg a little bit warmer. So I showed you quickly before I could go to image and adjustments. Let me actually pick the layer and not the mask. Image adjustments. And I have these kind of selections here: color, saturation, color balance, black and white, photo filters. These are all kind of things that I can do to the layer to kind of make some color adjustments. Same thing with levels. Okay, this is dealing with brightness, darkness. You can see that here as I'm playing with the levels. I'm adjusting, and we'll do more layers or levels later, but you can see what it's doing quickly. This is light as it goes through, as the color comes through. So we're dealing overall with it. I'm going to cancel that, but that will play with there. I can go to the curves. And again, same thing, I can change the color and I can select certain colors, red, green, blue. So we have a lot of blue. So I might want to like take the blue up. So if I take the blue down, you can see it got green. Okay, which is not what I want. If I want the other way, it's turning it more blue. Okay, so maybe I'm gonna go to the reds. All right, and I'm gonna make it a little bit more red. And you can see I'm pulling that layer up. So what I'm doing is just moving the colors, that red colors that are in there, into a more red saturation. You can see I can push it all the way up and make the whole thing red. Okay, so this is the way of doing it. And if I take the reds away, we start to get the blues or the teals starting to come in. Okay, so that's the curves. Okay, and again, we'll get into more of that as we go also. But again, these are ways to change color. Again, there's 20 ways of doing it. It's no matter which one does it best. Hue saturation, we played with that one earlier. And overall, right now, this is the hue and saturation for the entire layer. And I'm playing with it here and I'm pulling it down to different color palettes. And the red here doesn't mean it's red here. It's just basically shifting the hue to that direction. All right, so I'm gonna go up a little bit and see where it goes the other way. That may be too much. It's too purpley, I think. But let's say I want this purple. You can see I can push the saturation way up or way down. Way down, I'll take it to black and white. But I can also do the lightness and darkness. So I can kind of lighten or darken that color that I'm working with in here also. It can also do what we call colorize, which will take the whole image and put kind of a color cast on it and play with it that way. So this literally will take it to whatever color palette up here on my scale that I'm working with. You know, so here it is, quite yellow or orange. Okay, so again, this can work, but again, it's about being subtle with it and how difficult do I want to be with it, but we're seeing we're subtle there. And I can get it back to a point where it probably looks somewhat natural, okay? But really we're doing a big color tint on the file itself. Okay, so I wanna get a little bit more. Okay, so we can do that. So, but what we're doing here is we're being destructive, meaning when I click OK, it's adding this color to the layer itself. And we won't be able to go back and adjust this for too long. Again, if we keep moving ahead or we come back tomorrow and open this file or save it and reopen, this becomes a permanent part of the layer. Okay, so this is a destructive thing, what we're trying to, this does. Again, so we were trying to work non-destructively. So let me show you how to do the same thing, exactly the same thing, and be non-destructive. Okay, so destructive is this, selecting the items up here under image adjustment and these pop outs. Or, I'm gonna undo that because I want to get back to where we were. Coming down below the trash can, the plus button, the folder button, is a black and white circle, okay? And if I select that or click on it, you can see a bunch of things start to pop out. And if you notice, when you're observant, a lot of these, or most of these, are also up here under adjustments. Okay, so brightness, contrast, color. It doesn't do everything, but the 90% of this palette is down here. Okay, and these are adjustment layers, we call it. So I'm going to go back to hue saturation. And you see, I get the same kind of panel that was just open before. And I'm going to do the colorized version. And you can see I am literally colorizing. Okay, and I'm literally colorizing everything. at this point, the background and the foreground. Okay. If I just want to colorize the foreground, okay, there's a little button here. It says adjust all layers below or click to clip to the layer. So if I click that where we have a box with a little arrow down, that will affect only the layer immediately below. So over here, we can see there's a little arrow coming off this adjustment, this layer adjustment, hue saturation layer adjustment, and it's only affecting this layer. Okay, so even if I turn off this layer, it's doing nothing now. Okay, if I click this box like that, you see it's doing everything. There is no little down arrow. It's going to do everything that's below, no matter what it is. Okay, so we can make adjustments in this case to one particular layer, and it's non-destructive, meaning we got this. And I'm like, wow, I couldn't do totally love that color. It's pretty awesome. What if I don't want it now. I want to change it. So now I can double click on it and I can come back in here and change it. Okay, so it's not permanent. It's an adjustment layer that's non-destructive that I can change to whatever I happen to want at any point in the future. Okay, does that make sense? And if I don't want it at all, I can literally just turn it off. Okay. So,
Quick question.
yes.
So when you clicked the adjustment button at the bottom of your layers
Yes.
area, is that what triggered a new layer?
Yeah, it made it. Yes, it made a new layer with the adjustments on it. So these are adjustment layers.
Okay.
Okay, so you can pick these any one you want, and again, they're not permanent, but they're doing like this up here does. I have to be on a layer to select it. It's doing these. Okay, there's a couple things it doesn't do, but it does all of these. Look, these black and white filters and stuff, and they become non-destructive. So what I'm trying to show you is you can do what this does up here, and you can do it in a non-destructive way, which I would always recommend, because you want to have that control. I mean, like I said, I made that color change, and yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. But what if I change my mind later? If I made it a permanent part of the layer, I can't do that. But with this adjustment layer, I can. I can literally just double click on it and bring it up, and I go, I don't want to colorize. I just want to tint it. All right, so I can come through and play with the colors this way. Okay. And if I don't like it, well, then I can just kind of turn it off. Does that make sense? So it's really these are really kind of beautiful things. So I'm going to just do another adjustment layer. We'll do photo filter. I love these things. And what they do is they kind of tint it. These are based upon, if you've done photography and you ever put a filter on the front of your camera, it kind of colorize. That's what this does. And the density is telling you how strong it's going to be. So you can kind of build through and just kind of add color tints to it. The nice thing about this is it's kind of a easy to define. If I say, do a deep red filter at 40%, I could duplicate this over and over for the next, 12 years with every picture and get that same kind of thing in there. So it's kind of I like these filters. And the cool thing is they're kind of subtle a lot of times. They're not like really heavy. I can of course make the intensity more, but I can kind of just make these very soft, subtle changes to images. Okay, and this says color, but this really is not a color. I can select this here and do something else, and you'll see it'll make that change there. So I can not just filter with the computer's pre-done one. I can make up my own color to add that also. Okay, and just kind of go back and forth with those. So these filters are just totally awesome ways of doing things. And again, if you want to just have it for the layer below, you select that and you can see it's just dealing with the layer directly below, in this case, the filter. And I can do multiple filters, meaning I can have multiple adjustment layers going on. So here's a hue saturation. Well, maybe that's not appropriate. Maybe I want to go to brightness contrast. Okay, so I'm going to brighten up the layer and kind of increase the contrast. And again, I want it to be just on the layer below. And so this is affecting, all of these down arrows are only affecting this layer. Okay, they're not dealing with anything else. Okay, so I can play with the hue saturation, the brightness, the color, tinting, whatever. All here is adjustment layers, and they're working on the layer below, okay, not the entire file. So if I pull this up, you can see now it's adjusting the sky because that's the layer above. Okay. So these are kind of really the smart way of working in Photoshop, is to play with adjustment layers. If you want to do any of these things, brightness, contrast, exposure, they're really, and if I want to change the exposure on everything, I could just kind of go through and do the exposure here. And I'm going to adjust it for everything. I'm just playing with the gamut. And I'm going to do it, yeah, entire image. And I'm going to put that exposure up top. Okay, so now I play with the exposure on everything. And I'm like, I don't want that. I can turn it off. But if I wanted everything, I can just do that here, right? I mean, this is totally the way of doing it. And I'm adjusting everything that's below, not just that individual layer. And I'm doing it in a way that's not only non-destructive, but allows me the opportunities to come back and turn things on and off, or make additional adjustments down the line as we work. Questions? I know I went through a lot there in 20 minutes. Take a breath. What kind of questions you got?
So does the adjustment layer only pop up if you click that first layer, or can you just choose another adjustment layer and adjust upon that?
You do them on top of every time I click down here and select, it's going to bring in a new adjustment layer. So I can have duplicate, brightness contrast layers if I wanted to. I don't know why you would, but you could do that. Adjustment layers on top of adjustment layers.
But do you advise like adjusting, like continuously pressing the adjustment on the original? Kind of like that third layer right there? Yeah.
Say that again. I'm sorry. Explain one more time.
Like if you continue to adjust and make new layers, do you advise to click on that original layer that you're adjusting on?
I'm just thinking.
I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like,
yeah,
if you look at all your layers,
yes,
and you just count up that third layer, that's the one that you've been adjusting on this whole time, right?
Yes, I've been adjusting each one individually, but yeah, I can come back and adjust this one if I want to. I think it depends on what you're doing. Like here, if I'm like, I like it, but I want it to be brighter. Well, I have a brightness contrast layer that I built in. I can come back in here and do the brightness.
Oh, okay. So you just like build on top of it.
Yeah. No, I think you have to work whichever layer you're trying to work to get the effect that you want. That makes sense. If I want low contrast, and really what the contrast is doing here, you can see the picture kind of grayed out. Or if I go over here to high, it kind of made it more black and white. So contrast kind of like black and white. See, the black and white are kind of grays things out. So here it is, very high contrast with it. And it's, again, affecting only the iceberg layer. So yeah, I would do that. If I want to go, you know what, that's too much contrast. Now that I've done some exposure changes, I'm going to come back here and just make that change as needed. And likewise, I go, you know what, the photo filter's kind of not, I don't know if it's working now. I can come back here and go, okay, let me warm it up because I want warmer. So I think you have to adjust each layer as you go based upon what you're trying to do.
Got it. Okay.
Does that make sense? And that's the cool thing about Photoshop here, is you can go back and forth with these layers. Okay, so if you're like, I thought it was right, but it didn't work as well as I want it, come back in and you can make that a change. Because we've made a lot of changes since we first started dealing with it. And had we made those changes actually to the layer itself, we'd have a hard time fixing it at this point. There's a lot. I'm looking at the history here. These are all the things we've done in the histories. I mean, and this is not everything we've done today. So as we start to go through, you're going to not be able to do things, but with adjustment layers, you can come back and make those changes. Likewise with the mask, I can come back and make changes. So it may not be perfect yet. I can literally still come up here with the mask selected and paint in stuff that I want to paint in. Or, oh, I painted out the iceberg. I can fix those things and I can come back with the black brush and literally paint out the areas I don't want. Okay, so I can come back and make these adjustments throughout my process to work in the way I want it to work. And it may be some things I just want to get rid of because it doesn't look right. Just because it is that way doesn't mean it has to stay that way. That's our job as designers, right? We've had the lady that had some blemishes. Well, if it doesn't look right, go back and fix it. That's kind of the joy of having Photoshop is like, oh, I don't like that peak there. You can kind of paint that out just to make it feel a little bit more natural. Okay. We can make changes. Okay. Again, everything we're doing here is non-destructive. So if I want to come back in later, I can. Questions? Other questions? You gotta have some questions. No, nothing.
Just gotta work. I would probably review the lecture and work with it.
Okay. So again, what we're doing here is like we're masking, which is going to be key. Okay. Let me do a quick demo with how the same kind of theory can work with the girl. Let me open that file. Okay, so we're going back to the kid. All right, we're making a copy. And my goal is to make a duplicate. I want to look at like they were twins. There were two of them in the picture. Why I would want that, I don't know, but I'm going to do that. So I'm going to actually quickly do an adjustment layer to brighten it up a little bit, because again, I want to make these overall changes before I duplicate things. Otherwise, it just becomes much more difficult as we go. So I'm going to say that's pretty good, and I'm happy with that. And again, I'm working this over the entire picture. So I don't want it, I'm going to leave it over everything. I'm not selecting it to be just the layer below. I'm going to duplicate the background again now. So now, again, this adjustment, brightness, darkness is covering everything. And what I want to do is take this layer and get rid of everything but her. So I'm moving it over. You can see where it is. So I'm going to get rid of everything in the background but her. And I'm just going to put it in place there the way it was. Something like that. So I could just paint it out, erase it. But the problem is when I get close to her, there odds are I'm going to get into some problems there of erasing and want to go back and fix things later. So I'm going to make a mask, right? I'm just going to go to the mask tool. Again, that's the square with the circle. Click that on, and you can see the mask popped up, and my brushes went to black and white. And I'm on the black. I'm just going to make a big brush at the beginning here. And I'm just going to paint this all out. And I'm literally just getting rid of everything except her. And the cool thing is, if I need to bring parts back in at a later point, I can. Let me zoom in a little bit here. A little bit smaller brush to work with. And I'm just going around real quick. And again, you will want to do any kind of adjustments, color, saturation, all of that beforehand. But we're going to say it was done. Well, I didn't want that, so I'm going to pink back in a little bit there, a little bit of white back in. Took away too much. Just coming along here. Now, in this case, I'm on a very hard brush. My brush looks like it's probably about 100%. But I'm going to soften it up because I'm going to get close and it's going to work a lot easier down the line. So I'm going to drop my hardness down to about 15, 20%. And then I'm going to zoom in and go through. And by softening it up, it's just going to make it easier. You can see it's kind of fuzzes out the edges. So I'm not quite there, but I'm working along pretty good. So when I turn it back on, it's going to work. I'm going to make it a little bit harder. It's kind of painting her out. I'm just working very, very quick here. But because it's on a soft brush, it's a little more forgiving. Your eye won't see the mistakes that I'm making here. Again, I'm just doing this soft to make it quick. It gets into hair, obviously it gets a little weird. So I'm just gonna, I got a weird strand there. Come around. So when we're all said and done, we have her, but we don't have the background. So we're just kind of taking her away from the background. Quickly coming through. So again, this is another way that we can use the mask. In the first one, we were masking out the sky to keep the background or the main element. And here we're masking out everything, all of the background for the most part. So we have basically, in this case, the foreground object. And the cool thing about it is it's separate. So it's its own layer. And we can make adjustments if we had to, but we can also play with positioning. So we'll show you here in a second how we can play with the positioning of it. Again, just being quick with it, going through, getting rid of the rock itself. So I'm going to disappear up in there. Okay. So zoom back out, turn on the background. We can see we have two. Now we want to move one over. Okay. And I'm going to flip her so it looks like they're kind of back to back. So I'm going up to edit, transform, and down here we have flip horizontal. Okay, which put her over to here. So now we have to, you can kind of see that little white haze. That's kind of a sign that it got clipped out. So we'd have to get in there a little bit closer with that. And that's because we were on a soft brush. We didn't have the crispness there. But again, you can see within a matter of, you know, a couple minutes of work, where you can kind of add in things or take away things. And again, it's with the mask. So if I didn't want that, I could take the mask off. Okay. And to turn a mask off, just click on the mask and right click, and you can disable. Okay, and you get that. You can, so you can see what was underneath. Okay, or I can just click again and it enables. So back here on the iceberg, if I click on disable, it brings back the original sky. If I click again, it just kind of takes away that mask. So there's a way to turn the mask on and off if you want to. Don't worry about these right now. Mask options were there. One thing I want to show you with the mask is if I double click on the mask, I get this little properties panel that pops up. And if I hit select and mask, it's going to open up a new window. Okay, so I'm selecting mask. And what it did was it opened up a new window and you can see where your mask is. And these are different ways that you can view your mask. Here with the marching ants. So everything's kind of gone. Overlay, which is kind of the masking way it used to look. Okay, back in the old days, we have this red color of film we put over black, white, black and white. So we can just see that and we say, well, there's some spots up here actually missed. And then we can kind of see it with just the layers. So again, depending on how you want to look at this, you can do that here. And we're in that low, we can change this to be as hard or as bright as we want. This is not changing anything with the mask. It's just showing you the area. You can see it or not see it. And then there's a few other options over here. The shifting will kind of get rid of things. Let me see if I can zoom in so you can see that. So the shift edge kind of changes how the mask overlays. So I'm going to push it this way, and you see that white edge? It got that glow, which I don't want. And that happens a lot as we're clipping. We didn't get in close enough. So if I shift the edge back to a negative, it's actually clipping in a little bit onto the inside. And I can eventually ultimately get rid of that whole edge for the most part. And I see there's still some area down here that I'm going to want to deal with. And I'm just going to paint it in. A couple of the masking down here. So what I did was I just used the brushes over here on the left to make the adjustments specifically with this mask layer. It also, there's a nice cool in button here called invert. So for some reason I wanted to get rid of her and keep everything else. One click does that, right? It flips everything around. So invert does the opposite of what we were. Okay, so we can flip things back and around. So that's kind of a really cool way of doing it. Like, oh, I want to flip it. You can do that way. When you're done, you click OK, and it brings you back to where we are here and back to where we were. Okay, we didn't do any, all we were doing was playing with the mask itself and kind of fine tuning it. And I can see here, I don't like, there's like a little gap now. You kind of got up in here, like there's like a bulge on their head. So I'm going to actually come back in manually and fix that. I'm going to paint in some stuff here. You can see I could just kind of come back and I can make these fine-tune adjustments whenever I want. Okay, so it looked good before. When I bring it back, I'm like, that didn't look right. And I can still make that adjustment on the image. Okay, so the masking is, again, a really, really, really powerful way of being able to add things or take away things and being able to come back and work with them later. Okay, again, it's a non-destructive way of working. So in the future, I can make adjustments because that's going to happen. It's going to naturally happen. We're all that way. We all want to make a change down the line. Okay. That's why we go through 10 different outfits before we go out, or, we can't decide on, what cereal to buy at the grocery store. It's just too many options. Oh. Okay. Questions? Oh, I can't be that good. You must have questions.
In this case, to add that extra bit of realism to her twin, would you have to just like hand paint the shadow underneath her?
Yeah, you could come. Yeah, I would definitely say come back in and do a shadow. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's like that's something that you paint. You can't really copy.
Yeah, there's a couple. One, I could paint that in. I could just do another layer. Just a new blank layer. I'm going to put it below because that's where I want it to be. Pick a black or a gray. And we'll go with a brush. I want to be very soft with it. I'm going to over exaggerate so you can see it, but yeah, I can come back in, just kind of put that in. I'm just kind of brushing it in. I know it's too much, but then I'm going to come back and I'll play with the opacity here. I can drop that down. So I'm just going to add that shadow in like that. And if it's not the right color, of course, I could just kind of, I could do it in a cut. I could do an adjustment layer, color adjustment layer if I wanted to on it. But it's a completely separate layer. The other way, and I'm going to leak that to see so you can see I'm on that. There is a layer style. We're jumping ahead, but I'm going to show you because you brought it up, called drop shadow. And it has a drop shadow. Now, this is not the color you want. And we're going to go up here to a black or a gray. And I'm going to drop the spread. So you can make adjustments to a drop shadow as to where it's coming from. And that's kind of dropping it into place with the opacity. And you can make all of those kind of adjustments here with a shadow. And the cool thing about this is that we do a effect with the shadow. It's not, again, it's a non-permanent thing. It's here and you can see it adds it to the layer. But if I want to turn it off, I can. If I want to make adjustments, I can double click on it and I could make changes. I want to make it a different color. So I made a different color shadow. So it's not a permanent change. So this is kind of a nice way of working again in a non-destructive way and being able to make adjustments as we go. Okay, but we'll get into those kind of layer styles here. That'll be coming up. We also have things that we're going to go through like filter effects. Okay, those are in here. Examples of that would be, we'll just go to the girl and do a couple. Let's say we want to crystallize, and that's crystallizing that layer. Do kind of weird things. So you can do effects on different layers. I can do effects on whole images. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to turn off all of these. And a filter effect might be, add some ripples. So it shows you what these do. You can see it's kind of adding those ripples in there. It can also, there's effects that do like oil painting. Where is that one? Render, style, wheel paint. I love this one. Makes you look like a real artist. Okay, so it's kind of going to be a preview here what this is going to do. I'm going to click OK. And you can see, if we zoom in, it's pretty cool. And it does all this kind of like oil paint kind of thing, and it's adjustable. It's kind of really slick. So again, these are effects and filters. And we'll get into all that, but this is like the cool stuff that Photoshop does that you will use at times. I mean, it's not like you use this every day, but you know, might be something you need down the line with that. All right, other questions? Okay, so today what we covered was the masking tool, which as a way to cover up and hide things, or to you know, mask away other areas. So in this case, we mask away the sky, and we were able to reveal below, in this case, the sky below. Okay, and I can bring in any sky I want into this and pull that in. And you can see when I did that, you can see, I can see up here where I've kind of messed up. My mask is still not perfect. Okay, so I'm going to have to literally come back in and work with it at some point. We played with adjustment layers. Okay, and these are here that I can go through and change things. And I can, they're not permanent. So if I want, oh, I don't want the red filter anymore, I want a blue, I can do that. And by selecting or deselecting, we're dealing with the layer below or everything below. So in this case, it's only affecting the layer below. If I turn that off, it's going to affect all the layers below. Okay, so in this case, it's affecting the iceberg and the sky itself. It's non-permanent, so if I decide I want to make it here, and I want to go back to the red, I can do that, okay? And I can change the density or how intense it is. So if I just want to kind of color tint it a little bit red, just to color match it. I like the photo filters for that. I think they work very well to kind of make adjustments with that. That's moody. Look how scary moody that is. Right. But again, if it's something too much, come back in. I can make those adjustments as we go. So again, very, very forgiving. Especially as you start, right? You're just like, I don't know if I like that or not. You're gonna want these options. And I want them now, and I've been doing this forever. Because you get in there and you're like, oh, you're headed down one road, and you get to some fork and you go off and you go, oh my God, I shouldn't have gone down that way. I can come back to these adjustment layers, to these masks, and these non-destructive things that I've been doing to my image, and make those changes back to someplace else that I want to be. Okay, because again, it does get a little freaky sometimes with this stuff. All right. Questions? God, I have some questions.
I would have a question, but you lost me like way in the beginning. So I'll just watch this lecture later.
Okay. But no, and seriously, if you don't get it, please tell me, guys. I know I'm moving because I want to get you into everything that you can do here. But we have time. Does that make sense? And we're going to end shortly here, and I want you then to take an hour, half hour, 45 minutes, whatever, and try to do these things if you haven't been trying to do them as we're going along here. And if you don't get it, just write it down. Come next class, say, hey, I got this far, but I couldn't get any past. Tell me. I guarantee you're not the only one. Okay, and that's perfectly fine.
I bet that.
Go ahead.
I bet that part of the problem for some people, as with me, is there's so much information, and the programs are so overwhelming that it's like a very dauntless task.
Yeah, well, that's why we're only doing a couple things at a time. It is very overwhelming, but you're going to be over the overwhelming soon. Don't worry. I know I've been doing this long enough to know you're going to be fine. Again, if we were in a classroom, it's a little easier. I can walk through and go, oh, you're not getting it. I can see, or you are getting it. And we could do demos in class, pretty much like we're doing here, but I would be able to walk through and check you manually. So this is where the burden comes back to you, but it's definitely doable. Trust me. I mean, I've taught this program for so long that I know that if we take these little steps, it's good. Because I could talk for another 3 hours, but that's not going to do anything to help you learn these little steps as we go. It's just going to overburden you. Okay, we'll get into it. We have time. So I don't want to, like I said, there's filters and effects, and there's 50 other things we can do. I'm not showing you those because you don't need that yet. If you can get this idea of working non-destructively with mask, adjustment layers, when we did the cloning, and when we did the healing brush with new layers, right? We did a whole new layer, and let me put that down here. And we did the healing brush with that, spot healing, and I'm going to zoom in. And let's say I want to get rid of some of these. I'm spot healing parts of the rock and the ice, and knowing that it's going to, maybe I don't want that hole anymore. I can come back through and just cleaning up, knowing that that's a separate layer and that's non-destructive. If you can get all this, you're going to be off to the races, because this is how we have to work. Okay, so these other things like effects and making it look like an oil paint, all that. That's just like, I like, they're like gimmicks to me. They're toys. You know, they're important. It's a very important thing to do, but it's not crucial. You know, this kind of stuff is crucial. And if you learn to do this properly, all the other stuff will start to make sense. Okay, you know, all the other things will come into play down the line. Okay. Questions? Nothing. All right. So
Yeah. When did you say the video would be up?
this video, they'll be up when we're done here. I tell it to save. It'll save it to my computer, and then I have to upload it to YouTube, and that takes whatever. And then I have to copy the YouTube video source to a web page, and then I upload the web page. So where are we at? It should be up by, you know, an hour, I hope, depending on how fast the computers are working.
Okay, thank you.
So what I want you to do now, what I don't want to call it homework, but lab work, that's a better way of talking about it, is to take the iceberg picture and take out the sky and put the lightning in. Okay, and you can go through and do all these other adjustment layers on it, and that's fine. You know, you can change the color of the sky. Okay, and you can do it with a separate adjustment layer or overall adjustment layers. That's totally fine. But I want you to just kind of work through adjustment layers and take this, no, not that one, that's the oil paint one, but take this mountains and put in the sky, and then go through and just kind of color adjust it. So just getting your eye used to making changes. Okay, so we're just kind of training the eye to look at things and go, oh, that's not right. Because in reality, you could have a picture of the lightning over the iceberg, but the colors are off. So that would mean it looks fake. So we're trying to kind of make things look as somewhat natural as possible and training your eye that way. Because otherwise, if you don't, you're going to just start going down the roads that you don't want to go. Like here, if I made one a different color, you would see the difference. Okay, so if I hadn't done the color adjustment, or do the color adjustment here, see, one's lighter, one's darker, and they're going to go, that doesn't look right. That wouldn't happen. Okay, there could be one lighter and one darker, but not that much and not to that degree. So I want you guys to start to train your eyes to how things actually look in photographs and in real life. And this is going to be really helpful as you continue to work as artists, designers, creative people, to make them convincing to the audience.
I actually had a quick question.
Yes.
So going back to that iceberg photo,
Mhm.
is it possible to actually sample the color of the lightning sky and sort of, I don't know, filter the rest of the iceberg photo in that color?
Yeah. So let me show you how to sample a color. So we want to get that color of the sky. I'm going to double click on the paint chips, the foreground. And if you notice over here, I can pick colors and it's going to change. And I can play with the hue. And these are all numbers that we can put in mathematically. CMYK, cyan, magenta, black, or yellow and black, RGB, red, green, blue, or these are the web colors. So I can put in preset numbers. Okay, or if I scroll up, you see it got the little eyedropper appeared. And I can literally click that eyedropper and it picks that color. No matter where I pick, it does it. And it picks on any layer. So it doesn't matter what layer you're on, it just picks the layer. And you can see what you might think as a color. You know, this is like almost white. Okay, but the color changes quite rapidly in there. So it's kind of selecting the one you want. And you can see it's pretty pink in here. Even here over on the darker side, we're still on the pink side of things. We're here, you can see this is the blue. And you can kind of see we're in the lighter blues, and you can kind of literally select, and you can zoom in with this, with the command plus or command minus, it kind of picks it like, here, it's like, what is that color? It pops up here. And I can either save it, just click OK, or I can write down these numbers if I need to also. Okay, so I can select colors with that. So now we're going to click, and now we have that color that's here. And I can use that in my exposures. And again, I can write that down. Okay, and I can write all these down, and I can kind of pull those back into other things. I can even add as a color swatch. Okay, and name it. And we're just going to call it Sky Lightning. I think that's spelled wrong, but that's okay. I don't know if I clicked the wrong button here. I didn't want to do that. Sorry. Go to swatches, and somewhere in here, it should have added that color up here that I just used. Okay, and there it is at the bottom. Okay, so I can switch another color, and you'll see if I pick a color here, it changes over here on the left. And if I want to go back, I can pick that color there, the one I just did. Okay, and if I don't want that, I can always go delete, and you want to delete the Sky Lightning, yes, and it's gone. Okay, so that's under swatches. And again, we haven't even opened up half of these panels yet. We'll get to it. Okay, but I don't want to overdo you. But yes, you can. And then someone asked about the reflection earlier. Let me do this. I'm going to duplicate that layer. I'm going to put it up on top up here. I'm going to rotate that around. I'm going to just kind of quickly knock it up. And I need to flip it horizontally. So now we've got that there. And I want to, this is another place where a mask is going to come into play. Really, really helpful. Make a mask. And I'm going to get me a nice big brush. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to quickly pull out the iceberg. So we'll see that my mask, I'm not perfect down here at the edge, I know, but it'll be fine for here. So we have a mask, and basically the top half has gone away now. And this is the water itself. And it's got an opacity of like 48%. So I could kind of play with it up and down here with the opacity. So you can just see some of the lightning in here, a little bit down in here. Or I could make it stronger. It wouldn't be super strong here because of the way there's ripples in the water. So it wouldn't be like that perfect kind of reflection going on, but I could simply do that here with that. And the other thing I might want to do here is play with my layer styles. And I think we went through this the other day, to just kind of play and see what might happen to give me kind of a nice effect where it's kind of showing but not quite showing, so the screen does pretty good. That's too much, I think. Overlay, that's kind of dramatic. And I can still play with the opacity here, so I can drop the opacity down, but I'm getting some really nice colors happening in here, and some nice little like sparks of lightning. And again, it might not be perfect, and if it's not the way I want, I can come back and I can either move that layer around. And sometimes if you go to drop a layer, if it's got like a low opacity, it doesn't select it. Now it is picking that layer. Yeah, it's still getting it there. Sometimes it doesn't pick the layer. If it didn't pick the layer, move the opacity up. so you can see it and then you can move it around a little bit easier. So if for some reason you're like, hey, it's not moving, move your opacity up and work it that way. But I can kind of play with this and get some kind of nice effect where, again, I'm creating that mood of the lightning going off. And if there's a part of the lightning just looks, oh, that looks too fake. Again, I can just come in and mask that out. Click on my mask, select my brush, hide that again, and kind of cover off that one little spot there that was kind of bugging me, looking too fake. Okay. And now we're back to where we were with the reflection in there. So it's subtle, okay? But if the clouds were there and there's a little bit of a brief lightning strike, you can kind of see it going through. And I think in real life, it probably would be that way. It wouldn't be this really harsh thing. This is not one of those smooth as glass kind of water systems. Okay. I think it did a pretty decent job. Well, 30 seconds. Other questions? All right. Let's stop and share.